Hi everybody, it's your human anatomy and physiology teacher here, Mr. Poser. Today we are starting our third unit. It's on the integumentary system. And I'm sure you've heard me refer to the integumentary system before in a previous discussion. So you might already know that the integumentary system, which is the first official organ system that we're going to study, is the skin, hair, nails, and glands that are in your skin. So yeah, it's a pretty important system for a lot of different reasons, and it's very, very interesting as well. So I like to kick off this class with this system because it's really, really interesting. Not to say that the rest of the organ systems aren't interesting, but this one is especially interesting, I think. So let's get started. Let's do a quick overview of the integumentary system. What its job is, its overall function is to separate us and protect us from the external environment. So really, this is your first line of defense, separating out your internal environment from your external environment. So we discussed in our previous unit the importance of maintaining a stable internal environment. So your skin is really acting as that first barrier between the inside and the outside of your body, right? Because it's right on the outside. Some other functions of the integumentary system include sensation. So you have particular nerve endings and different types of cells that allow for different types of feelings in your skin. It produces vitamin D, which is essential for producing a protein called folate. I don't think it's a protein. I got to double check on that. But I'm producing folate, which allows for proper fertilization and reproduction. It regulates temperature. We already knew about that from our discussion of homeostasis and feedback loops. And it excretes small, and I mean small, amounts of waste products. All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about the skin. It's technically the largest organ of the human body, and it's very, very complex. Well, not very, very complex. It's kind of complex, but we're gonna break it down here into a little bit. So let's talk about some skin facts first. Look at Mickey Mouse over here. He's so shocked by these skin facts. So as I said before, your skin is the largest organ of your body. You have about 21 square feet of skin, which weighs about 7 to 10 pounds, and you have about 300 million skin cells, which you are losing all the time. Every time you brush off some, you touch your skin with other, objects at all, you're losing skin cells that are constantly being replaced. So we're going to talk about that later on when we get into the epidermis. On average, each square half inch of skin, that's worded weirdly. So a half inch squared of skin contains 10 hairs, 100 sweat glands, and 3.2 feet of tiny blood vessels called capillaries. So as I said, you got a lot of blood vessels in your body. And anyway, your skin is the thickest on the palms and on the soles of your feet, which are around 1.2 to 4.7 millimeters, and thinnest on the lips and around the eyes. So we're going to be talking about the layers of the skin here, and there's some layers that belong in the palms and the soles, and there's another layer that does not belong in the other areas of skin besides your palms and soles. All right, let's continue here. Let's talk about the skin. So your integument is another word for your skin, hence the integumentary system. The outermost layer of the skin is called the epidermis. That's what you're able to see. You can see my epidermis. There's a joke in The Simpsons. Who's the bully? I forget his name. But he's like, ha ha, your epidermis is showing. So, yeah, it's just the outer layer of your skin. It's composed of what we call epithelial cells. I'll talk about what those are in just a minute. The layers are mostly composed of dead cells. That's right. So most of your epidermis is already dead. You were dead the whole time. It's like a spoiler to an M. Night Shyamalan movie. And you get a new layer of brand new dead cells about every 25 to 45 days. So your epidermis, you get a brand new one about, monthly. It's pretty crazy because you're just continually shedding off these dead cells all the time. Every time your skin makes contact, you're losing a little more cells. And these cells in your skin, particularly in your epidermis, are filled with a protein that's called keratin. Keratin is the same protein that makes up your hair and your nails. So keratin is really the primary structural protein of the integumentary system, and we're going to talk about it a lot. Look at this creepy picture, by the way. This dude took off his skin. Isn't that creepy? Pretty creepy. All right, let's talk about skin histology here for a second. Let's talk about the tissues So as I said before, the top layer of your skin is called the epidermis, and the epidermis is largely composed of what we call stratified squamous epithelium. And what that means is that stratified means that there's multiple layers, and squamous means they're flat cells. So if you take a look at this this crosscut here, we're looking at the epidermis and the dermis, and the epidermis is composed. It's this area right over here. Okay, it's largely composed of these flattened cells that are just layers and layers and layers and layers. And you see this top layer over here that doesn't have anything inside of it? Yeah, those cells are already dead. They're dead keratinocytes. And here's the other thing about the epidermis. It has, since it's all just packed with these cells, there is no access for these cells to get blood. All right, so where they have to get their nutrients and get rid of their waste from is in the dermis. And the dermis is composed of what we call connective tissue, which is a combination of both cells and certain fibers and fluids and all sorts of stuff that are packed together in this one tissue. So beneath the epidermis is where we call the dermis, and the dermis is made of connective tissue. And the dermis contains your hair follicles, it contains your sweat glands, oil glands, all the type of glands that we're going to talk about as we call it skin appendages. It contains the nerve endings, and it contains the blood vessels. All right, and then there's one more layer underneath that we'll get to when we talk about the diagram, and that is composed of what we call adipose tissue, which are basically fat cells. All right, so there's our histology. So let's talk about these skin cells. We're going to talk about 4 important skin cells here, and this first one I mentioned previously, they're called keratinocytes. Keratinocytes, as you can see, it has the word keratin within it, and most epidermal cells, so like these cells that we were just looking at, are what we call keratinocytes, and what their job is while they're alive is to make keratin. So your skin is mostly, it's got a lot of keratin in it as well, and it gives skin its rough, leathery texture, and it also helps it make it waterproof. All right, so we as mammals, and like this armadillo here, we have keratin in our skin, and we don't breathe through our skin like, say, amphibians do. So think about like reptiles, birds, and mammals. We all have keratin in our skin that allows us from losing too much water to the environment. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that we don't dry out like an amphibian does. Thanks, keratin. All right, let's talk about another skin cell here. It's called the Langerhans cell, and it's named after the scientist that first studied them. By the way, they don't just name things in a complicated way to make you mad. It's actually for, the scientists that discover them, kind of thing. So anyway, Langerhans cells, they come from bone marrow. Bone marrow produces a lot of immune cells, and these cells are what we call phagocytes. And their job is to kind of eat. Eat is a relative term, but they kind of just take in these foreign substances that don't belong on or in the epidermis, and they digest them, and that's it. So these are really your first line of defense when it comes to particles or maybe something that might harm you trying to enter your body through your skin. So your Langerhans cells are really going to be important there, and they activate the immune system. So once they swallow something up, they're going to send a signal to other immune cells to try and get rid of it, whatever it is that's in your skin and should not be. We're going to talk about Langerhans cells again when we get into discussing tattoos and how those work. All right, so Langerhans cells are our second type of cell. Mercal cells, again named after a particular scientist that studied them. They are spiky cells located at the base. I'm going to add of the epidermis, at the base of the epidermis. And the job of Merkel cells is to function for sensory touch. All right, so Merkel cells are attached to nerve endings. As you can see here, we have a sensory neuron, and it is attached to this Merkel cell. And this Merkel cell will pick up on sensory signals and then send a message to this neuron, and then that neuron can send the message to your brain, and you can process it. Does it hurt? Is it hot or is it cold? Or does it feel good? Whatever is touching your Merkel cells, or whatever stimulus your Merkel cells is picking up. And finally, your fourth type of skin cell is the one that we may know the most about already. And those are called what we call melanocytes. And melanocytes produce a pigment called melanin, which we'll talk about extensively, hopefully, in the next video. Melanin, its job is to protect your skin, protect not only your skin, but the cells beneath your skin from UV radiation. And UV stands for ultraviolet radiation. And it gives skin its color. So ultraviolet radiation is automatically, being emitted by the sun. The Earth's atmosphere and the ozone layer it picks up a lot of that UV radiation, but it doesn't get all of it. So an extra line of defense that our body has is melanin. And melanin is a pigment that it absorbs and protects your cell's nuclei, the nucleus of the cells, from this UV radiation, and UV radiation can cause permanent damage to cells underneath, and it can lead to things like carcinoma or melanoma, which are types of skin cancer. All right, so thank your melanin for keeping you alive and not letting you have skin cancer. So pretty sweet. All right, we're going to talk about skin color a lot more in our next video. This will be it for this video. Please let me know if you have any questions. We'll see you next time.